Every Saturday at exactly 4 p.m., the glass door of Maple Grove Cafe would swing open with a soft chime, and Jack Turner would arrive. He came alone, always alone, rolling in on an aging electric scooter that wheezed slightly as it climbed the gentle incline toward the cafe's patio. A wool cap pulled low over thinning gray hair, brown parka zipped all the way up even in spring, and gloves with the fingers cut off. He moved with the patience of someone who no longer rushed for anything, someone who had long since learned that most things worth waiting for don't come early anyway. Jack's destination was always the same, the small round table beside the photograph of the lighthouse. That photo, long forgotten by the staff, had hung there since the cafe's first opening. Its frame was cracked along the bottom, and the glass reflected the soft orange light that poured in from the window at golden hour. No one else ever chose that seat. Whether out of respect or simple pattern, it had become known as his. He never needed a menu. He never had to speak. One of the younger baristas, a quiet girl named Rachel, would automatically begin preparing mint tea and retrieve the last lemon cookie from the display case, sliding it into a napkin without a word. Sometimes she'd find a second one tucked behind the biscotti and place both on the plate. It felt wrong, somehow, to serve Jack anything but exactly what he expected. When she brought it to his table, Jack would nod once, slowly, as if confirming that the world was still in order. Then he would reach beneath his coat and produce a folded $5 bill, placing it gently next to the saucer. Rachel would collect it and vanish back behind the counter. The rest of the hour belonged to Jack and the wall. The wall itself was nothing special, just standard red brick, a little darker in some places from years of coffee steam and sunlight. But Jack stared at it with a kind of reverence, as though it held answers no one else could see. Older patrons knew why. Years ago, before renovations, a bulletin board had hung right there. Its laminated banner had read, "Welcome home, 17th Division." Dozens of photos had once been pinned to it, young soldiers returning, some smiling, some stone-faced. For Jack, it wasn't just a wall. It was a doorway. In his lap sat the backpack. It never left his side. A faded olive-green military issue, with initials hand-stitched into the corner. The straps were fraying, the zipper stubborn, but Jack never touched it once inside the cafe. He rested both hands on it like a priest guarding relics. And in some way, that's exactly what it was. No one had ever asked him about it. Not the regulars, not the staff, not even the children who sometimes watched him curiously. There was something about the man's stillness, his quiet certainty, that made intrusion feel obscene. Like knocking during a prayer. And Jack did not move. He did not look around. He did not speak. His tea would steam gently beside him, the lemon cookie slowly crumble between two fingers. But his eyes, always his eyes, remained on that wall. As if he was waiting for someone to step out of it. Or maybe remembering those who had disappeared into it. 6 years. 312 Saturdays. Rain or shine. Holiday or not. Jack Turner had never missed a single one. He had come through flu seasons and blizzards, through flooding and closures, and even once when the cafe lost power. That day, Rachel had lit a single candle and served his tea cold. Jack had still stayed the full hour, staring through the dim flicker at the same section of brick. The townspeople had built small stories around him, little myths to fill the space silence left. Some said he'd lost a son in the Gulf. Others claimed he was part of a classified mission, dishonorably discharged and now living in penance. Still others believed he came there to meet someone who never showed. But over time, the stories grew tired, and Jack remained, a quiet fixture like the clock above the espresso machine, ticking along whether anyone noticed or not. A few younger patrons sometimes laughed at him. Whispered jokes. Wondered aloud if he had dementia, or whether the backpack was just for show. But even they hesitated to disrupt him. There was something about his presence that made mockery feel petty. Like throwing stones at stained glass. Still, Jack seemed untouched by the world around him. Like a man living between 2 seconds of the same moment, returning to it again and again. Always at 4 p.m. Always for 1 hour. Not a minute more. Not a second less. When the hour ended, Jack would quietly gather the cookie crumbs into a napkin, fold it neatly, and slip it into his coat pocket. He would then adjust the backpack on his lap, grip the scooter's handlebars, and roll slowly toward the exit. The bell would chime behind him as he left. Rachel often watched him go from the kitchen pass-through. She once timed it, 60 minutes exactly. She tried to imagine what it would feel like to keep a promise that long, without a break, without explanation. The truth was, she didn't know if anyone else in town could do it. But Jack could. And he did. Every single Saturday. For 6 years, no one knew what he was waiting for, or what he was remembering. Only that he came. Without fail. With silence. With reverence. That Saturday, the cafe was louder than usual. Spring had arrived in Ashton Hill, and with it came birthday celebrations, college students returning home, and a warm wind that carried laughter through the open door. Maple Grove Cafe, normally quiet and drowsy at that hour, buzzed with energy. A group of teenagers occupied 3 pushed-together tables near the center, balloons tied to chair backs, music playing low from a Bluetooth speaker. Someone had brought cupcakes in a pink box and was handing them out with whipped frosting already melting in the sunbeam slanting across the floor. Jack arrived at precisely 4 p.m. No one noticed at first. The scooter's hum was lost in the ambient noise. The bell above the door gave its usual chime, but no heads turned. Jack made his way to his usual seat, parked the scooter with gentle precision, and adjusted the backpack on his lap. Rachel met him at the counter and handed him the mint tea and lemon cookie without needing to ask. Then she saw the crowd. She hesitated, just a flicker, but Jack gave her the familiar nod, and she returned it with practiced calm. He made his way to the lighthouse photo, set the tea and cookie on the table, and began his hour. At 4:12, the laughter started. A sharp, sudden burst. The kind that doesn't belong in sacred spaces. It came from the birthday group. One of the boys had nudged another, pointing toward Jack. Then the camera came out, just a phone, just a few seconds of footage. But in that brief flicker of time, 1,000 cruelties passed unnoticed. The group's ringleader, a lanky teenager with a red varsity jacket and the entitlement of youth, mocked the way Jack sat. The way he held the cookie like it might vanish. The way his hands trembled slightly as he brought the cup to his lips. He mimicked Jack's slow blink, exaggerated his stillness. Someone added fake commentary, live from the war on bricks. The table roared with laughter. They didn't know who he was. They didn't care. Another phone appeared, then another. They filmed from different angles, trying to capture the moment he'd react. Waiting for the joke to land, the snap to break his stillness. One girl whispered something that made the others laugh even harder. A boy near the back muttered, "Bet that backpack's full of napkins." Jack did not move. He kept his eyes on the wall. His hands, though shaking slightly, never wavered. He brought the cup back to the saucer with the same quiet rhythm as always. He broke the cookie into quarters, as he always did, and let each piece dissolve slowly between his fingers. He did not look at them. He did not speak. He did not give them a single breath of response. But he did draw the backpack slightly closer to his chest. Not protectively, reverently. The laughter grew louder. One of the girls, emboldened, walked past his table and muttered, "Hey Grandpa, the war's over. You can go home now." Someone snorted. A cupcake hit the edge of the nearby table and slid to the floor. Rachel stepped out from behind the counter, but the damage was done. The phones had caught enough. The video was already uploading. Across the cafe, a regular customer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. An older woman near the window put her fork down. A toddler, oblivious, pointed at the commotion and giggled. No one stopped it. Not yet. At 4:23, Jack closed his eyes for a moment. Just a moment. A deep breath. The kind you take when grief knocks again. Rachel, eyes sharp now, approached the group. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there. Her face was pale with anger. But the teens only smiled wider, like the reaction was what they wanted all along. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, one of the boys waved his phone and said, "Relax. He doesn't even know we're here." He did know. Everyone did. But Jack still did not move. He had faced worse. He had been called worse. He had stood in worse silence, and worse heat, with worse fear, beside men who never came home. He had stared at walls far colder than this one. And he had made a promise. At 4:30, the laughter began to fade, not from shame, but from boredom. The joke, like most of their kind, had run its course. The video was sent, the moment recorded. They turned their attention back to themselves. Music resumed. Another round of drinks was ordered. The joke was over. But the room was different now. Something had cracked. Rachel returned behind the counter, but her hands shook slightly. The older woman near the window asked for her check early. The toddler began to cry, as if sensing something no one else could name. Jack continued his vigil. Eyes on the wall. Tea cooling. Cookie finished. His silence was not defeat. It was discipline. And in that silence, something stirred, something none of them would understand until it was far too late. Because 30 minutes had passed. And outside, someone had already watched the video. The minute hand clicked forward. It was 5 p.m. Jack's hour had ended. He placed the last fragment of lemon cookie into his napkin, folded it precisely, and tucked it into his coat pocket. He adjusted the backpack on his lap with quiet ritual and began maneuvering his scooter toward the door. The laughter had already moved on, teenagers back to their phones, their world returning to its shallow center of gravity. The mockery had become just another video buried beneath trending noise. But not for everyone. Outside, tires screeched against the curb. The cafe's bell jingled once, twice, as the door burst open with a sharp gust of air. Every conversation halted. Heads turned. 2 teenagers stepped inside. Not part of the birthday group, but something about them demanded attention. They wore cadet corps jackets, dark navy, sharply pressed, with insignia stitched neatly above the breast pockets. Their expressions were tight, focused, as if they had practiced how to walk into a room exactly like this. Behind them came a woman in a formal black suit. Her presence was immediate and absolute. A silver badge hung at her waist. In one hand, she held a government-issued tablet. In the other, a folder thick with documentation. Her heels clicked once against the old tile before the room fell into complete silence. She didn't have to raise her voice. "Is Mr. Jack Turner present?" Jack, still beside the table where he'd been mocked, turned only slightly. Rachel, now behind the counter, stood frozen. The woman stepped forward, her badge visible now, Department of Veterans Affairs, Federal Oversight Division. "We've reviewed video evidence and geolocation data uploaded to federal monitoring systems," she said clearly. "This establishment is within a protected surveillance perimeter assigned to Mr. Turner's registry. The incident qualifies under subsection 12 of the Respect and Dignity Act, section 9. She turned her gaze toward the birthday group. "Which of you filmed this?" No one answered. But hesitation is its own confession. She tapped her tablet. A still frame appeared on the screen, clear, high resolution, time-stamped. The boy in the red varsity jacket. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His friends backed away as if he were no longer part of the group. The confidence had drained from his face, replaced by the growing realization that something real was happening, something that could not be scrolled past or deleted. "You are being detained under charges of cyberbullying a federally protected veteran," the woman stated. "You will be processed accordingly. Officers are waiting outside." The boy's legs didn't move. He stood like someone waking from a dream into a nightmare. The cadets flanked him. One gently took his phone. The other guided him toward the door with a hand that was respectful but firm. The cafe watched in stunned silence. No one filmed this part. The woman turned back to Jack. "Mr. Turner, I'd like to apologize on behalf of our department. Your record remains flagged for observance due to your status. We are here in compliance with federal protocol." Jack said nothing. But he nodded once. A different kind of nod than Rachel had ever seen before. Not the quiet, habitual one of routine, but a deeper kind. Like the closing of a book. Like the return of a salute. Then the agent turned to the rest of the room. "I suggest you take a moment," she said softly, but with unmistakable authority, "to consider what kind of man you just laughed at." She gave no further explanation. She did not need to. She left as quickly as she'd arrived, no drama, no raised voices. Just footsteps fading down the sidewalk and a door that slowly swung shut behind her. Inside, the silence lingered. The birthday party was over. The music had stopped. A cupcake still sat uneaten on the table, the icing beginning to melt and tilt. No one looked at Jack now. Not because he was invisible, but because they finally saw him. Rachel, still holding a dish rag, realized she hadn't moved in 10 minutes. She felt her face flush with something close to awe, or maybe guilt, or maybe the dizzying blend of both. She caught Jack's eye for just a second. He gave her the faintest, gentlest smile. The kind that said, "You did nothing wrong." But even that was more grace than she felt she deserved. Jack turned back to the wall, just for a moment. One last glance. And then, slowly, he turned his scooter toward the door, the green backpack still resting on his lap like something sacred. As he exited, the bell above the door gave its usual chime. Outside, the sun had started to dip behind the roofs of Ashton Hill. Inside, no one spoke for a long time. Some moments, once they happen, shift the shape of a place forever. And though Jack had made no speeches, thrown no punches, and demanded no justice, justice had come. Not with noise, but like a sniper's *T in perfect silence. The following morning, the video was gone. Deleted from every account that had shared it. Erased, scrubbed, purged from timelines. The teenagers said nothing, made no claims, offered no apologies. The town whispered, but the details felt too heavy to repeat casually over morning coffee. And yet, the story had already taken root. By Sunday evening, the mayor's office released a quiet statement on the town website. "We reaffirm our commitment to honoring all veterans, past and present, who have served with dignity and sacrifice." No name was mentioned. But everyone knew. On Monday morning, a reporter from the Ashton Chronicle showed up at the cafe with a notebook and a respectful tone. He asked Rachel for comment. She declined. Then he asked about Jack Turner. Rachel paused. For 6 years, no one had ever asked about Jack Turner. And now, suddenly, they were asking everything. The following week, a group of men and women in uniform stood outside Maple Grove Cafe before it opened. They did not speak to one another. They simply waited. When Jack arrived at 4 p.m., they parted without instruction to let him pass, then followed him in and took seats nearby. Not beside him, but near enough. Rachel recognized the symbols on their jackets, a combination of Army, Marine, and intelligence insignias. Some were local. Some had traveled. One wore the patch of a unit long since disbanded. That was the day the wall began to change. By Tuesday, a laminated letter had been posted beside the lighthouse photograph. It bore the official seal of the Department of Veterans Affairs and a single statement, printed in clean, black type. Staff Sergeant Jack Turner, former U.S. Army intelligence analyst, later infantry, awarded Bronze Star for valor in nondisclosed operations. Decommissioned following actions taken in defense of civilians during evacuation operations in Mosul, Iraq. This wall is designated a federal site of remembrance, under silent observance. No more rumors after that. No more questions. But answers came in other ways. It began with the backpack. People had wondered about it for years. Now, they knew. Inside were letters, 57 in total, handwritten, folded carefully in clear sleeves. Some had grease stains. Others had fingerprints faded from time and sweat. All were dated within a 3-week period during deployment. Messages written by soldiers who didn't make it home. Before the evacuation in Mosul, Jack's unit had taken shelter in the ruins of a collapsed school. They knew their window was closing. Each man had written something to someone, a mother, a brother, a daughter, a wife. But when their comms were lost and transport never arrived, hope began to fade. Jack, though no longer required to serve in infantry, had volunteered to stay behind with the last wave. When he realized the commanding officer's plan would sacrifice a nearby family to avoid detection, he disobeyed the directive. He chose people over orders. He carried the wounded through side streets, guided civilians through sniper lines, stayed awake for 72 hours coordinating the uncoordinated. In doing so, he ensured 47 people survived, including 2 children, 3 local interpreters, and the medic who had begged him to deliver those letters home if they didn't make it. He was dishonorably discharged for insubordination. That dishonor had cost him his rank, his pension, and his silence. But not his purpose. Jack had carried those letters with him every day since. Read them. Protected them. Memorized them. He never tried to return them, not because he didn't want to, but because he'd never been able to track all the families. Many were overseas. Others had changed names, cities, or simply wanted to forget. So he did the next best thing. He returned to the last place they had all stood together, Maple Grove Cafe, where his unit had stopped before their final deployment. They had taken a photo against the old bulletin board, right where the wall stood now. They had promised they would all meet back there someday. Most never got the chance. Jack, alone, kept the promise. Every Saturday at 4 p.m., he came. He brought their letters. He sat with them. And he remembered. Not with speeches. Not with flags. But with presence. Rachel learned all this not from Jack, but from one of the younger cadets who returned a week after the incident. He didn't say much, just left a coin on the counter and said, "For the table by the lighthouse." He carried me on his back through fire. That was the first coin. More came. Challenge coins. Unit patches. Sealed commendations. A stack of them, discreetly left at the base of the wall. Rachel gathered them into a frame and mounted it beside the photo. No label. No fanfare. Just the quiet weight of memory. On Saturdays now, the cafe held its breath. Newcomers spoke in whispers. Veterans came in uniform. Strangers paid for each other's meals without saying a word. The air felt changed. As though something larger than the room had begged *N to take root there. And Jack? Jack changed nothing. He still came at 4 o'clock. He still ordered mint tea. He still ate one lemon cookie. He still stared at the wall. But now, he was never alone.